Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Karachi and in this video we're going to talk about cryptography. Now, in this module, we will discuss the principles of cryptography. We're going to describe symmetric and asymmetric encryption algorithms. We're going to talk about public key infrastructure, PKI, and then we're going to talk about the possible attacks on crypto systems, comparing hashing algorithms and how they ensure data integrity. Now, what is cryptography? It's a discipline. In this discipline, we use mathematical techniques or algorithm to secure information to ensure data confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. Very important. And in cryptography here, there's a process that convert plain text into ciphertext, and from ciphertext to plain text, and that's what we call decryption. Now, plain text means this is a readable text. Ciphertext means unreadable or encrypted text. The whole purpose of this is just to hide data from unauthorized users. Now, in the next two slides, we are going to discuss two types of encryption. The first one is the substitution, which can be called confusion, and transposition. Now, the substitution is straightforward, very old techniques here. And all we have to do is just to replace one character with another character, and the replacement must be consistent throughout the whole message, like from here to here. One shift, one shift, one shift. That's it. So, uh, to replace one letter with another letter is based on the key, and that's basically the key. And this has been used by Caesar cipher, where the Caesar shifted each letter of alphabet into three positions. Like from A, instead of to D, would be E, F, shift to E, F, G, for example, or four shifts, or five shifts, or whatever. The main thing here is the replacement has to be consistent throughout the message. Now, the other one is called transposition cipher, which is diffusion. This means that the order of the plain text characters is rearranged. I mean, okay, like for example, like 4 will become 1, 1 become 3, 3 become 2, and so on. The secret key determines the mapping between each one of these, okay, which is between the plain text and the ciphertext right here. Okay. Now, a good example is the rail fence cipher, where the plain text characters are written down in rows, and then the rows are read off in a different order to form the ciphertext. Take a look at it online. You will see what is meant by the rows. Now, here just a simple comparison between the substitution cipher versus transposition cipher. Type for security, substitution is low, transposition is high. Complexity is very simple here, very simple. Now, in transposition, it becomes complex. Now, key is a table here. Now, what does it mean, key table in the substitution cipher? It means the table that maps each letter in the plain text to another letter in the ciphertext. The key table is the secret information that allows the plain text to be encrypted and decrypted. Now, transposition cipher use sequence. The key sequence basically is a series of numbers that determine the order in which numbers of the plain text are rearranged. I mean, just keep in mind that not all transposition cipher use a key sequence. Some of them, they use something called keyword instead. Means that a keyword is a word or phrase that is used to generate the key sequence. Now, in terms of breaking, okay, substitution is easy. Transposition is more difficult. And the substitution basically used for very short messages. This one used for long messages. Now, what is the cryptanalysis? It's basically the method used to decipher encrypted. They study different type of methods to decipher encrypted information without having access to any key. you know. Now, when, for example, like a new encryption algorithm has been released, you know, to the world, or developed, the crypto analysis is used to ensure that breaking the code is impossible, or it's going to take so much time and resources to do this to the point it becomes impractical. Now, let's look at the signography. So, what is signography? It's the process of hiding data in a plain view, like in pictures, graphic, text, audio, video, whatever. It's different than cryptography. In cryptography, we try to obscure the content of the message, and signography aims to conceal the actual message itself. There are five main types. The first one is the text steganography, which can be done by changing the least significant bits, LSB. Now, if you look at this small picture right here, you see this is 1 byte, and here is the LSB, least significant bit. Now, it's basically, I mean, you can see from the picture, this is the rightmost bit in a binary number. It is the bit with the least weight, meaning that it contributes the least to overall value of the number or the information or whatever. So why steganography use it? Like, for example, okay. Well, because since it is the least noticeable bit, so it's less likely to be detected. Now, the first ones that, as we said, the text, you could apply least significant bits, or you could use special characters or symbols that are not normally visible. Now, when it comes to image, you would change the LSB of the image pixels. All the pixels in the image will be changed and will be utilized by signography, or you could basically altering the image color or compression settings there. You know, now, the video steganography can be done by changing the LSB of the video frames or by using other techniques like altering the video uh, audio track or compression settings. Now, audio steganography, again, we use LSB of the audio samples or by using other techniques such as altering the audio's frequency or amplitude. You know, the most common things here, by the way, text and image things, that I have seen more often used to hide things in it. Of course, there's the network steganography, by altering the header of the data packets or by using other techniques like embedding the message in unused bits of the packet. You can find that sometimes in those packets, places that is unused and, steganography will use it. Now, this is just a simple example of how to use it. OpenStigo is, a simple one, easy, free software. Here, for example, you could, this is the text that you want to hide it. You just click on the hide text option here, and you import the text you want to hide it, and then you choose the cover file, like picture, for example, and the output you will save it under this name, for example, in a specific folder, and then you choose the algorithm you want. Okay, you have different options right here, and then you have to, use the password, to protect the encryption. Now, once the message is sent, the receiver will import the file. In our case, it should be sent, not here. It will be sent.png, and the output will be here. And then the secret key must be entered, the one was generated at the beginning, and then you click extract data, and there you go. You'll be able to see the content of the message that was sent, or sorry, the message that was intended to be hidden in the file here. Okay, so let's talk about symmetric and asymmetric algorithms. Now, what is encryption algorithm? It can be mathematical function or program that needs a key. The strength and the strength of the algorithm and the secrecy of the key and the length of the key determine the security of the data. So what is the key? It's basically a sequence of random bits generated, from a range of allowable values called key space, which is contained in the algorithm. The larger the key space here, okay, the more keys that can be created. The more random keys that can be created, the more difficult for the hackers to find out, the key that was used to encrypt the data. So, so we could see here right now, the key plays a major role and the strength of the algorithm plays a major role. Now, the strength means simply it requires, an impractically large amount of computational resources, like, in terms of time and power, to break the encryption through brute force. So, no weakness, the algorithm must resist all types of non-cryptographic attacks, such as differential cryptanalysis, linear cryptanalysis, and some other types, which we will discuss it toward the end of this lecture. Now, what is the crypto system means? It's a system for encrypting and decrypting data. It contains key, encryption and decryption algorithms, ciphertext and plaintext. Now, no matter how strong is the algorithm or how large the key space, if the key is not protected, okay, then the attacker can decrypt the message easily. Now, let's try to understand the key space here. Now, the key length, as an example here of 3 bits allows creating 2 to 3 equal 8 different random keys here. So that's a random bits from key space. Now, we could see that it's very small key space, which means it's easy to figure out which key, the attacker can, figure it out to break or to decrypt the data. Now, so therefore, the larger the key space, the more random keys can be created. Just imagine if we say 2 to 100. I mean, you will get large number of random keys that makes it even harder and harder for the hackers to break into the system. Now, this is just a simple table. Okay, we're gonna go later on and learn more about symmetric or asymmetric and hashing. But few things as a summary. Symmetric uses single key. Asymmetric uses 2 keys. Now, the symmetric, the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt data. So, which means that the sender and the receiver must have the same key before the data is being transmitted. So, therefore, symmetric algorithms support confidentiality, but not authentication and non-repudiation. However, it is much faster than asymmetric algorithms. Now, symmetric algorithm uses 2 keys, one for encryption and the other one for decryption. And it does support authentication and non-repudiation comparing to symmetric here. Okay. But the problem with it, it is a lot slower than symmetric. And by the way, they usually call it public key cryptography, which is something we will discuss it in much more details later on. Now, the hashing here is used for verification. Hashing takes a variable length, input as an input, and then convert this input into fixed length output string. They call it hash value or message digest. Now, the fixed length output size, it depends on the type of hashing algorithm being used, which is something we will discuss it in the future. Now, let's look at symmetric algorithm. Crypto system uses symmetric algorithm that, as we said, 1 key. Now, what's the advantage? Faster than asymmetric, difficult to break if you have very large size key, and only 1 key is needed to encrypt and decrypt. However, there's a disadvantage, which means that require each pair of users to have the same unique secret key, which is then in this case we have a key management issue. Imagine that if you want to distribute your key to many, many, many people here, which makes it sometimes difficult to deliver keys without risk of a theft. Now it says, now by default, it does not support authentication and non-repudiation. Why? Because of the shared key. Like, both sender and receiver use the same key, So therefore, anyone with the key can create or decipher a message, making it hard to verify the true origin. Now, there's lack of authentication. The problem with the symmetric encryption, it does not provide a method to verify the identity of the message sender because the key is the same for all people involved in the process. No non-repudiation. Now, first of all, what is the purpose of non-repudiation here? The purpose is to ensure that the sender cannot deny sending a message. However, in the symmetric algorithm, any party with the key can generate a message, making it impossible to confirm the true sender cryptographically. Now, here is the other issue, the key distribution problem here we have. Distributing the shared key secure is challenging. If intercepted during the distribution, the attacker can impersonate a legitimate user here. Now, let's look at different types of symmetric algorithm. The first one is the stream cipher. Okay, and of course we have the block cipher. Now the stream cipher operate on plain text 1 bit at a time, but more common 1 byte for efficiency purposes. Now here we have the key stream is generated, okay, as usually 1 bit, but it can be a byte. It's basically the key stream here. It means it's a stream of random or pseudo-random bits that is used to encrypt a plain text. It is generated from the secret key. So the secret key is used to generate key stream. Okay. Now it will be basically combined with the plain text here, either bit by bit or byte by byte, and the key stream must be long and unpredictable. And then it will be XORed here, and the output will be the ciphertext. Now there are different methods that can be used, you know, to do the stream cipher, and to generate the key stream. I mean, the first one here is the linear feedback shift registers. This is type of pseudo-random number generated, RNG. They are simple to implement and can generate, a very large number of random numbers. However, they are not truly random because it is pseudo-random number generator. And the sequence can be predicted after a certain number of numbers have been generated. Now, pseudo-random number generators here, the algorithm that generates sequence of numbers that appear to be random, but actually they are deterministic. Okay, they are used in many applications such as gaming and simulation. Now the other one is the hardware random number generator here, HRNG. Now these are hardware devices that truly generated truly random numbers. They are based on physical, design that are unpredictable. Like it could use like radioactive decay or thermal noise. And it is often used in application where security is critical. The second one here is the block ciphers. It operates on blocks of bits. Now, these blocks are used as input to mathematical function that perform substitution and transposition of bits here. Okay, now the simplest one here is called electronic code book, ECB mode of operation, as an example. It's very simple. And you could see it like, in different application, like data encryption, file and disk encryption, VPN, SSL, and TLS. You know, the way it works, it takes the plain text basically and divide it into chunks called blocks. That's one block, two block, three, four, and so on. Now, the block size can be, 64 bits if you're using DES, okay, uh, algorithm, or if you use 128 bits like AES, which stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. Now, if a plain text message is not long enough in a block here, basically, it's not enough to form a complete block, then padding is usually added to fill it up. So here's the thing. The block cipher works on the fixed size blocks here, converting them into blocks of ciphertext as you see here by applying the key to the algorithm. And here's the block and here's the output. It's very simple, very easy. And basically, when you convert them into blocks of ciphertext, it should be of the same size. Of course, that depending on the encryption key provided. You know, quite frankly, the electronic code book, it is the easiest block cipher mode of functioning. It is easier because of the direct encryption. You could see it right here, of each block of input, plain text and output, as you see it here in a cipher format here. Generally, if the message is then longer than 8 bits, larger than bits in size, it can be broken down as you see it here. Just, see that these are broken down, you know. Now, there is another one. It's called the cipher block chaining, CBC. This is advancement to the CEB. It uses something called initialization vector. You can see it IV, and here's the block, second block, and so on, the one we discussed. And the initialization vector must be used in the first block to make each message unique. Now, what is initialization vector? Okay, simply this is a random number. Okay, it's a random number or pseudo random number. Don't we discussed it before? It's used together with the secret key right here, his secret key, together to do the encryption of the block right here. And here is the output, which is the ciphertext block. It's basically using the IV simply to ensure that the same plain text encrypted multiple times, even with the same secret key, will not always result in the same encrypted value. You know, okay. So, by the way, in this here, the IV size here usually is the same size of the block size. And here you can see this is the output here, okay, going to here. And the output basically will be XORed with the block here, and it gets encrypted with the key, and here's the output, and we'll continue. So basically, you could see that each ciphertext block depends on all plain text blocks process up to the point to the end right here. See that again? Encryption of the block. Here's the block. Here's the IV XOR. Will go into the encryption algorithm with the key. Here's the output. The output will go directly, will be XORed with the plain text, the block 2, encrypted with the key, and here's the output. Now, there are many types. And for example, let's look at the counter mode. And there's also another mode called output feedback mode. Now, in the counter mode here, this mode is considered one of the most secure block cipher mode. There is a counter here, which is incremented for each block. Now, you could have like block number 1, incremental counter 1, this counter 2, incremented for each block of the plain text here. Okay, and then the counter is XORed okay, with the plain text, okay, you can see it right here, XOR. See, here you can see the counter is getting encrypted with the key, and then XOR with the plain text, which result in the output right here. Now, the mode is very efficient, by the way, and it's often used in streaming application. And if you research online, okay, you will see many other modes. The choice of block cipher mode depends on a specific application. Like, for example, like the ECB, the first one we discussed it before, is typically used for small amounts of data, like a password. Now, while the CBC, cipher blockchaining, is basically used for larger amount of data, and the counter one here is often used for streaming application, right, such as network traffic. So before we move further, talk about different algorithms used, there are few important points that are worth mentioning briefly from security point of view. Now, block size, we know the block size means the size of the plaintext or ciphertext block. Now, larger block sizes generally means greater security against certain attacks like birthday attacks. This is due to the larger possible combination of plaintext. However, increasing the block size might also introduce inefficiency in terms of speed, especially like for underlying hardware or software is not optimized for it. Now, for the key size, typically means a larger key size means greater security because of the larger key space. This makes brute force attacks where an attacker tries every possible key more challenging. However, there's a problem with this. Longer keys introduce additional computational overhead. Another issue is the quantum computing. Now, the quantum computers have the potential to break many of the encryption algorithms that are currently used to protect sensitive data. Now, this is because quantum computers can perform certain calculations much faster than classical computers. Okay, however, there are many companies are planning now to implement post-quantum cryptography. Now, for number of rounds, this is basically number of iterative processes or transformations the plain text undergoes during the encryption. The common one could be 10 or 12 or 14. Now, the multiple rounds are used to increase the diffusion and complexity of the encrypted data, providing resistance against different types of cryptographic attacks. Now, however, like key size, adding too many rounds can introduce unnecessary computational overhead without significantly improving security. Now, encryption mode, the one we discussed before, as the choice of mode can significantly affect the security, efficiency, and functionality of the encryption scheme. For instance, some modes are more suited for parallel processing, while others offer better resilience against specific type of attacks. So make sure you do your homework well. Now let's talk about the DES, which stands for Data Encryption Standard. You know, uh, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, wanted the means of protecting sensitive data but unclassified data. So they come up with this type of encryption. And then IBM proposed Lucifer, a 128-bit encryption algorithm. However, NSA reduced the key size to 64 bits and created the DEA. Now, in 1988, NSA thought that the standard was at risk of being broken. Why? Because it's been out for a very long time and increasing the power of computers. Now, in fact, in 1998, it's very well known that the computer system was designed to break the encryption key in only 3 days. Okay, so this back in 1998. Now, what are the features? The key size is equal 64 bits. In reality, It's a 64 bits, but 8 are used as a priority check bits for error control, and has 16 number of rounds. Now, the triple DES served as a quick fix for DS vulnerability. Okay, it it performed the original DS computation 3 times. The keys can be used in 3 ways. Key option number 1, all 3 keys are different, which means that the key space 56 times 3 equal 168 bits. So it's more secure option. Now, option 2, K1 or key 1 and key 2 are independent, but key 3 is similar to or to key 1. So in reality, the key space is 112 bits. Now, keying option 3, all 3 keys are identical, as you see here. So basically, it's only 56 key bits. It's backward compatibility with DES, but never used. Now, when the DES algorithm encrypts here, okay, and then it gets to the level 3 right here, you see it. This one here decrypts the data using K2. See that, the reverse of the first one. Okay. It does not mean it converting the data to its original plain text format. Instead, it's merely applying the DS decryption transformation using K2. Now, this transformation provides another layer of cryptographic processing. After this, the data undergoes a third transformation, you can see it right here with the K3. Okay. So before the final ciphertext comes out. Now, just remember that this intermediate states here of the data using the 3DS process are not plain text, but transformed data. Only when you reverse the entire process, okay, correctly using the correct keys in the reverse order, you will obtain the original plain text from the ciphertext. Now, AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, NIST put out requests for a new encryption standard, requires submission for symmetric block cipher capable of supporting 128, 192, and 256-bit keys. AES works by basically taking the plain text message divided into 128-bit blocks. Now, each block is then encrypted using, any key you want, 128 or 192 or 256. Now, there was, during the submission, there was different proposal to use the algorithm in that, at that time. And the one that won is the readable. Okay, this is how they pronounce it. Why it was chosen? Well, one of the reasons is for security. Randall demonstrated a high level of security against crypto attack techniques during the selection process. It had resisted all attempts at cryptanalysis better than all other finalists right here. Also for efficiency, it can work much better than others in smart cars or in modern workstation and servers. In terms of performance, in the software and the hardware was much better than all of these here. Now, it is much more flexible. The design allows for various block and key sizes. Although for AES, the block size is fixed at 128, you know, uh, with key size, as I mentioned, 128, 192, and 256 bits here. Now, algorithm is simple, clear, and short in terms of mathematical structure, which is beneficial property both for analysis and for ensuring clean and efficient implementation. You know, there have been some proposal, if you research online, to extend the ES standard to support larger key size, such as 512 bits. However, these proposals have not been adopted by the NIST here. You know, the main reason for this is that there is no clear need for a larger key size. The 256-bit key size is considered to be secure enough for most application, and there is no evidence that the 512-bit key size would be significantly more secure. Okay, so however, we will see how things will evolve in the future. Now, what type of application? Secure application for data storage, for encryption, VPN, and cloud computing. Now, there's another one. It's called International Data Encryption Algorithm, IDEA. The block cipher operates on 64-bit blocks of plaintext. Each one of these plaintext is divided into four 16-bit blocks. These blocks go through a series of mathematical transformations, especially using modular arithmetic and bitwise operation. It uses 128-bit key, okay, and designed to work more efficiently in computers used at home and in business. And it's free for non-commercial use. Now, the blowfish is a block cipher, operate on 64-bit blocks of plain text. Key length can go up to 448 bits with 16 rounds. Okay, and it was developed as a public domain algorithm by Bruce. RC4 most widely uses stream cipher, used in WEP wireless encryption. Finding the key with a cracking program is so easy and so quick, especially if you encrypt your Wi-Fi with WEP. And it was created back in 1987. Now, the last one is the RC5. It's a block cipher, operate on different block sizes, 32, 64, and 128. The key size ranging from 0 up to 2040 bits. The rounds, typically 12 or more, and was created by Ronald Rivest in 1994 for RSA security. So this will conclude the symmetric algorithm. Next, we will start with the asymmetric algorithm. Okay, so let's talk about asymmetric algorithm. It uses two mathematically related keys, one for encryption, the other one for decryption. And it is called public key cryptography. The public key is openly available. Private key, you keep it secret. But, basically the owner will keep it secret. However, there are different ways to encrypt a message with a symmetric algorithm, depending on what exactly your goal. I mean, if your goal to provide authentication and non-repudiation, then that's the path you need to take. Of course, authentication means to verify that the sender or the receiver or both is who they claim to be. Non-repudiation ensures that the sender or the receiver cannot deny sending or receiving the message. And this is extremely important in certain applications. Now, how it works, I'll give you a couple of scenarios here. Now, user A encrypts a message with a private key and send it to user B. Now, user B decrypts the message with the user A's public key. Now, again, because we have one private key and then we generate public key from it. Now, a user's private key and the public key are mathematically related. However, it is infeasible, to derive the private key from the public key. Now, the second scenario, if confidentiality is a major concern for user A encrypts a message with user B's public key. Now, user A can assure user B about the authenticity of the message simply by encrypting the message with their private key. Now, let's focus on RSAs. It was published back in 1978 by, Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman. It was the first algorithm for use for both encryption and digital signing. Still widely used in e-commerce. Many browsers are using TLS protocol that uses the RSA algorithm. Now, there are two important concepts here we need to understand. The first one is the multiplication versus factorization, which is the reverse operation, the factorization. Now, it is based on difficulty of factoring large numbers. For example, like if I give you two large prime numbers, P and Q, multiplying them to get N equal, P times Q. That's the formula. It's just straightforward, easy. However, if I give you the output N and ask you to determine what is the P and the Q, it becomes a significant challenge when N is sufficiently large. Now, RSA key generation here. It uses one-way function to generate the key. Now, in RSA cryptographic algorithm, for example, the public key is partially based on a product N of two prime numbers P and Q, as shown in the previous slide. This product N is made public, but the individual primes P and Q are kept secret. See, the security of the RSA keys lies in the fact that while someone can easily compute in from P and Q, they cannot, feasibly factor in back into P and Q without significant computational effort when n is sufficiently large. And that's why they call one-way function to generate the key. I mean, here, look at it. This is the formula. This function is easy to compute in one direction, like to compute fx multiply x by itself. Then you choose the random number x as the private key, and then you compute it using the formula, as a public key. Now, just to recap to make sure that you understand it, the RSA concept carefully. RSA is mathematical foundation for one-way. The reason is this considered one-way function is that because the current mathematical knowledge and the power of the computers are not enough, okay, and they don't have a sufficient algorithm to factorize a large composed number into the prime component. This means that the forward operation, the multiplication, is easy and quick, okay, but the reverse operation factorization is not. Now, however, and we will see this in the future, how it will, evolve. Quantum computers, if they become practically workable, could theoretically factor large numbers efficiently using Shor's algorithm. In the meantime, what we have are the classical computers currently cannot do it uh, in a reasonable time for sufficiently large numbers. Now, key generation. Okay, a user can generate a key pair by choosing two large prime numbers, multiplying them together, and then performing some additional mathematical operation. That's it. Now, once the key pair generated, the private component are kept secret. The public is shared everyone without compromising the private key. Now let's look at Diffie-Hellman. It was developed, by Diffie and Hellman. That's where the name is coming from. It does not provide encryption. The first practical solution to the problems of securely exchanging keys over the internet. This is extremely important. It focuses on enabling two parties, to establish a shared secret key that can be used for subsequent data encryption. Now, there's limitation. The limitation is man-in-the-middle attack vulnerabilities. Without a way to authenticate the participant, the protocol is vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks. A malicious actor can intercept the key exchange and establish separate shared secrets with both participants. Now, this issue can be mitigating using the digital signature, which is going to be our next topic. Okay. Now, computational intensity. Well, see, the original Diffie-Hellman can be computational intensive, However, especially with the large prime numbers. However, it can be addressed using a variance, like elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, something we're going to talk about it shortly. Now, one final note here, I want to mention that Diffie-Hellman is very secure key exchange protocol, but very important to remember that that it is only as secure as the prime numbers that are used. So, and if the prime numbers are not large enough, then it is possible to calculate the discrete logarithm of the number and break the protocol. Now, the other one here we have elliptic curve cryptography, ECC. It's a public key cryptography system using elliptic curves. Something like will look like this, and you select the values. Now, based on difficulty of elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem. And now the good thing about the ECC that their keys are smaller than RSA. If you look here, you see that the 256-bit key, same security as RSA encryption, that is a 3072-bit. Imagine the difference here. So what does that mean to you? It means that this is an efficient algorithm that requires only fewer resources. And we said this before, the bigger the key size, the more, computational resources needed, to do the math and the computation. Now, which means requires a fewer resources like the memory, disk space, the bandwidth. It's a very good candidate for wireless device, and especially the cell phones, they use it a lot and can be used in TLS, SSH, VPNs, Bitcoin, and others. The encryption is very secure, by the way, but it's only as secure as the elliptic curve that is used. Now, the last one here is the asymmetric algorithm is Al-Jamal. It used to generate keys, encrypt data, and can create digital signatures. Developed by Tahir Al-Jamal in 1985, it uses discrete logarithm problems that are complex to solve. Now, see, solving the discrete logarithm problem can take many years and require CPU-intensive operation. Now let's talk about hashing algorithms. Hashing takes a variable length message and produce a fixed length hash value. They call it message digest. The purpose is to verify the integrity of the message. Think about it, it's more like a fingerprint of the message. If the message is changed for some reason or another, the hash value also changes. In this case, the recipient knows that the original message changed during transition. Now, this is the original text, and these are different type of hashing algorithms here. And here you can see each one of them, they have a different output for exact same text here. And if you like to practice this, simply go to this website link here, type any message you want, try to change even one single letter, and see for yourself, how the output will look like. Okay, so different algorithms means different outputs. Different hashing algorithms will produce different hash values for a given piece of data. Like hello, using MD5 will be different than SHA-256 algorithm, as I showed you before. Now, the output length also, it depends on the type of hashing algorithm you're using. MD5 is 128-bit. SHA-1 produces 160-bit. SHA-256 produces 256-bit. And SHA-512 produces 512-bit. Now, simply look at this example here. This one here, this algorithm, it's 128, and this is 160. They're the same, except they're using a different type of, bit size. So here's the output. Is smaller than this output here for 160. Now, there are different type of algorithms here. MD2 is old, obsolete. MD4 should not be used. MD5 also should not be used, because a collision for MD5 hash can be found with just a few machines within a few hours, MD6 was released back in 2008, and still not widely used. SHA-1, which is for 160, considered broken since 2005. Okay, it uses 160-bit digest, and is at that time this was written, found in many applications in government and private sector, you know. SHA-2, basically it has different versions like SHA-224, SHA-256, SHA-384, and 512. Now, basically they're using the same algorithm as SHA-160, but the good thing that the longer digests make collisions harder to find. SHA-3 became the standard by NIST back in 2015, and what's so special about it can take an input of any size and create an output of any size. It's not intended to immediately replace SHA-2. However, if you'd like to read more about it, you could go and visit this website. Now let's talk about digital signatures. Digital signature enables any person to digitally sign an electronic piece of data, like proving the authenticity and integrity of the data. Of course, this process will require using the sender's private key and the public key cryptography, which means the sender private key, will encrypt the message, and the receiver basically has the corresponding public key of the private key of the sender in order to reverse the process. Now, the whole idea here, if you look at it here, the sender select the file to be digitally signed, in a document platform application. Then the sender computes the computer calculates the unique hash value of the file content, and then the hash value is encrypted. Okay, this is very important. The hash value is encrypted with the sender's private key to create the digital signature. See, that's the thing, that the hash value is encrypted with the sender's private key to create the digital signature. Now, the original file, along with the digital signature, is basically sent to the receiver. Now, the receiver uses the associated document application, which identifies that the file has been digitally signed. The receiver's computer then decrypts the digital signature using, of course, the sender's public key. The receiver's computer then calculates the hash of the original file and compares the hash it has computed with with now decrypted hash of the sender's file. If there's no change, this means everything is fine. A slight change, that means it's not okay. Something happened, on the way to the receiver. Now, Pretty Good Privacy, PGP, was developed by Phil Zimmerman as a free email encryption program. Okay, see, the intention was fine, according to Zimmerman, because he cared a lot about the privacy. It allowed typical users to encrypt email messages. However, Zimmerman almost got arrested for this innovation in the mid-1990s by United States government. Any kind of unbreakable encryption was seen as a weapon by US government. Sharing it was compared with selling arms to enemies. So what happened is that the PGP got somehow went out to the world, and that's why Zimmerman got in trouble, but the United States decided to drop the case. Now, the internet standard for PGP messages is now called OpenPGP. It uses certificates similar to those in PKI, but the problem here, it does not use a centralized CA. The verification of CA is not efficient as PKI, and that's a problem. I'm going to show you just the encrypt process here. Here's the data, and then here's the where you generate random key, and here's the random key, and then you would go ahead and encrypt the data file, and here becomes the encrypted, and then you encrypt the key, this key, using the receiver's public key, and then combine it together, an encrypted message, and then you send it to the receiver, and of course the receiver has to do or has to reverse the process in order to decrypt the message and verify the authenticity as well. Now, pretty good privacy, support different type of algorithms. What I meant, the Open PGP, which is AES, IDS, and RSA, and others. And here just a simple uh, picture of application called Go Anywhere Open PGP Studio. And here you could see that you could select a Word document or Excel. You could encrypt it only, you could sign it only, or you could encrypt and sign, then you send it, and the receiver using the same application, they have to decrypt and verify, or verify depending on how you send the message here. Now, finally, here we have the secure multipurpose internet mail extension. This is another type of public key encryption standard. It focuses on basically encrypting and digitally sign email, and can also encrypt attachment as well. It also has the ability to use PKI certificates for authentication, and it's widely used for email authentication, and it's built into Microsoft Outlook. I mean, you could simply find the configuration for it, and it's not really difficult to configure. In addition to Microsoft Outlook, you can find an Apple Mail, Gmail, the G Suite Enterprise, your iPhone, iOS Mail, and so on. The whole idea, the sender, plain text, here's the recipient's public key. Okay, you use it to encrypt the message or the email, and then the recipient will use the private key to decrypt the message. And it's all done through the application you are using. Okay, let's talk about a very important topic called PKI, Public Key Infrastructure. It's a comprehensive framework of hardware, software, policies, standards, and procedures that provide the foundational trust architecture for supporting digital signatures, encryption, and authentication services in a digital world. It is, of course, designed to work with a symmetric cryptographic system, basically using public and private key. So what are the main functionality behind using PKI? For authentication. Why? To confirm the identity of the entities involved in a digital transaction. Also to ensure integrity, with the digital signatures, recipients can verify that the data has not been altered during the transmission. As encryption, information is encrypted using recipient's public key and can only be decrypted by the recipient's corresponding private key, ensuring confidentiality. And of course, here, non-repudiation, which ensures that the sender cannot deny sending a message or conducting a transaction. Now, let's talk about the components of a PKI. It has several important components here. We need to look at it. The first one is the digital certificate. It's basically a digital certificate binds a public key to the identity of the person or entity that owns the matching private key. It typically contains the owner's name, the owner's public key, the expiration date, and of course the certificate serial number, and the digital signature of the certificate issuing authority so that the recipient can verify that the certificate is real. Now we have the certificate authority, a very important component, which is the trusted organization or entity responsible for issuing, revoking, renewing, and providing digital certificate. So basically, this is the most critical entity in the PKA environment. And there are some examples here like VeriSign, GoDaddy, GlobalSign, and there's others as well. Now, for registration authority, RA, it acts as a verifier before the CA issues a certificate. It verifies the identity of the entities requesting digital certificates and approves or denies these certificate requests based on verified identities. Now here, this is very important. Certificate Revocation List, CRL. It's this database contains, every revoked certificate, and it's maintained by the certificate authority. Key pair, public and private keys, and entities. Here, I mean, that's basically users or systems, simply like servers, devices that employ certificates and cryptographic keys. Now, let's take a look at the operational process of it. First of all, the registration authority agency, they have their own application. So the applicant basically, will need to access the application, and the applicant or the individual, they need to complete the application with a proof of identity. Then they need to submit this to the registration authority right here. So in this case, the registration authority, they need to review and validate the application. They want to make sure that this is who he is, or this is real identity, or this is the real company, for example. And they will create certificate request and generate key pairs. Now, all these requests then will be forwarded to the certificate authority. And after the certificate authority, process the certificate, they need to update the public key registry with the certificate. And of course, here you can see that the generated certificate will contain name, organization, the key, the signature, the other information, including the expiration date of the certificate, which is very important. And then of course, it gets updated in a public key. Then after this process has been completed, then the certificate will be issued to the applicant. Now, also, part of the job of the CA is, to issue, make sure the certificate is expires, or to revoke or to suspend certificate for reasons that we're going to discuss. Now, every certificate must have a period of validity. And here you can see the validity period issue on this date for google.com, and it will expire on November 6, 2023 at this time. So, however, the certificate can be renewed with a new expiration date if the keys are still valid and remain uncompromised. Now, let's take a look at reasons why to suspend or revoke certificate. I mean, obviously, the most important reason is the compromise of a private key. If there's any indication that the private key associated with the certificate has been compromised, the certificate will be revoked immediately to prevent any misuse. And that's extremely important process. Change in affiliation here, like for example, like if the employees leaves a company or changes roles within a company, their certificate might need to be revoked. This is also particularly true if the certificate indicates the individual's role or permissions, here. Now, certificate issued in error. Okay, so if the certificate was issued in error or contains incorrect information, it should be revoked or replaced with the correct issued certificate. Now, CA compromise, yes, that happened before, and there are many examples. I mean, like for example, Symmetric in 2017, and another large certificate authority was compromised. The hackers issued a fraudulent certificate for a number of websites, including, U.S. Department of Justice and European Central Bank, you know. So that's, I mean, basically, if the certificate authority itself has been compromised, all certificates issued by the CA might need to be revoked. Now, there's something called end of service life cycle. Now, let's say that you have server running or server or network appliances, whatever. Was issued certificate is decommissioned or retired, then you have to revoke its certificate. Other reasons like ending of company's operation. I mean, let's say the company cease operation or shut down a service. Anything, any certificate associated with this company should be revoked. Withdrawal of trust in the CA. If a higher level CA decides that a subordinate CA is no longer trustworthy, okay, I mean, there could be many, many reasons for that. It might revoke the subordinate CA certificate. And, speaking about subordinate CA certificate, we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Superseded certificate. Now, if a certificate is replaced with a newer version, could be many reasons. Like, for example, like you updated the algorithms, or or you start using a longer key length, the old certificate might be revoked. Non-compliance with the certificate policy. This is also another thing, that not complying with the policies. This will give the CA a good reason to revoke your certificate. Now, the CA compiles a certificate revocation list, CRL, which contains all revoked and suspended certificate. Now, in some cases, like, in some cases, it might be able to restore the revoked certificate, just as an example here, if parties come to an agreement later. Now, another important concept is called HTTP, Strict Transport Security, HSTS. Now, it was created back in 2012 as a security policy mechanism that helps to protect websites against man-in-the-middle attacks, for example, like such as protocol downgrade attacks or cookie hijacking. The policy is usually communicated by the server to the user agent via the HTTP response header field. That's called strict transport security. So here you can see when it says strict transport security means that it forces all traffic between the web browser and the web server to be sent over a secure channel. Now, if the web server certificate cannot be validated by the web browser, it will disallow access to the website. Now, let's just take a quick look at this important thing that you need to add it to the header one by HSTS. Now, here you can see the max age, that's in seconds. It means the browser should remember that the site is only accessible through HTTPS for this amount of time. Include subdomains. Okay, this means you're telling the browser to apply the policy of HSTS to all website subdomains as well. The preload indicates that the site owner's consent to be included in a browser hard-coded HSTS list. Let me show you how to access it. Like if you go to this website right here for the Chrome, which is basically, sorry, I meant the configuration of this, of the Google Chrome. Okay, it's a developer tool that allows you to query, as you see over here, the HSTS settings here. You can use this page basically to check if a website has enabled the HSTS, and in this case, you could review the policies for this particular domain. Okay, you can again you can access it in a developer tool. Now, backing up keys. Okay, so if keys are destroyed or not backed up, then any encrypted business critical information is gone, lost forever. Companies typically back up their keys and store them offline in a safe or vault. A very good example here we have Microsoft Rootkit. It includes features in its server operating system for configuring a server such as CA. Instead of like if you have the server, instead of go and buy a third-party CA, you could use Microsoft Certificate Services. Simply, you just have to go into the settings and add roles and feature wizard in any server, and then you have to select the Active Directory Certificate Services. Now here in this picture here, basically, you need to go for the server manager, okay? Then you need to click on the roles and features, and then you need to select, what role you want, like Active Directory Certificate Services tools here. And then here you need to select the certificate authority. And then you need to select whether this is a root CA or subordinate CA. Now, a root CA, by the way, it's a self-signed CA that it's at the top of PKI infrastructure hierarchy. I mean, this is like for organization, they have their own root CA, and there are subordinate CA, like I mentioned before, and they issue the certificate for other entities or servers or whatsoever, as you see it in this picture here. Now, now if you want just the root CA, you could go by this. If you want to add subordinate CA, you have to select this option. Now, the question is how to protect the CA. There are many steps or procedures that you need to follow. I'm gonna mention some of them here. First of all, this root CA must be kept offline. The only time you need to connect the root CA to the network when it's needed to issue or revoke certificate. This will help to reduce the risk of root CA being compromised. Also, it is strongly recommended to use HSM, which stands for Hardware Security Module. It's a secure device that is used to store the root CA's private key. Uh, as far as I know, it's very difficult to compromise, and they can help to protect the root CA, even if the server on which it is installed is compromised. That's very important thing. Of course, it goes without saying that you need to log all access to the root CA, so that any suspicious activity can be detected quickly. Now, here's also another picture of the Windows server. You can see that you can select the hash algorithm for signing certificate issued by the CA. You could choose whatever you want based on organization requirements. And finally, I want to show you something related to PKI about encrypting HTTPS traffic with SSL or TLS. Now here we see you are, the client using the browser and you want to access the server here. First step, the client requests a secure session, HTTPS. Then the server responds with a certificate public key. Then your computer will create a symmetric key and encrypt it with the public key server. And then the encrypted symmetric key sent to the server, and the server decrypts the symmetric key, the client one, with the private key of the server. And finally, after all this process has been completed, now the session is encrypted between the client and the server, and this is how you can access a secure website, log into the website, do whatever you want to do on a secure site. The last topic here, we're gonna talk about understanding cryptography attacks. The first one is passive attacks, means you're using different type of tools to eavesdrop on, on a connection or whatever. So basically, you are just collecting data, sent to or from the crypto system. As an example, active attacks attempt to determine the secret key used to encrypt plain text, by actively sending input. See here, right now, you're interacting with the crypto system, and that's what makes it an active attack. Now, hackers and the general public usually know the algorithm, how it works. It's usually because companies developing encryption algorithm realize that the public might discover vulnerabilities that the company's programmers missed. Software engineers are a good example, who develop open source code products follow this philosophy. Like, for example, AES was made public back in 1997, and this has been subjected to intensive scrutiny by the public ever since. However, no major vulnerabilities have been found in AES. Now, there are a few reasons for this. First, the public is much larger than any single company's development team. Now, this means that there are more people who are looking for vulnerabilities in encryption algorithms. Second, the public is more diverse than any single company's development team. This means that there are more people with different skills and perspectives who are looking for vulnerabilities in these algorithms. By making encryption algorithm public, companies and open source software engineers are essentially crowdsourcing the security of their algorithms. Now, this means that they are relying on the public to find vulnerabilities that their own programmers missed. Of course, there are also risks associated with this approach. One risk is that attackers could use the public knowledge of the algorithm to develop new attacks against it. Another risk is that the public might misuse the algorithm to create new forms of malware. Now, let's talk about the first type of attacks called the birthday attacks, a type of cryptographic attack that exploit the birthday paradox. Now, the birthday paradox states that the probability of two people sharing the same birthday in a group of 23 is 50%. However, if the probability increases to 99.9% in a group of 70, in this case, so it goes up with larger number of people. So, the purpose is to find, the same hash value for two different inputs here. Now, birthday attack should be used to crack a password hash by generating a large number of hashes and comparing them to the target hash. If two hashes match, then the attacker knows that the password for that hash is the same as the password for the target hash. So the purpose is what? Basically to reveal any mathematical weaknesses in the hashing algorithm. SHA-1, okay, was found by a team of researchers that it suffered from collusion, you know. Now, SHA-2 family of hash functions, this is the family, as you see here on the screen, is resistant to birthday attacks. Now, let's talk about mathematical attacks. In this type of attack, the attacker exploits weaknesses in cryptographic algorithm using mathematical techniques. Like some of the categories here, we have ciphertext only attack. Now, here's the attackers only have access to ciphertext. It's coming from here, ciphertext only attack. Now, the goal is to recover plain text or any information about the encryption key. It's difficult. Now, unless the attacker has access to a large amount of ciphertext that is encrypted with the same key, and that's the condition here. Now, known plain text attack, okay, that's another type of cryptographic algorithm attack. The attacker has access to both plain text and ciphertext. The goal is to recover the encryption key. Now, this is difficult. Why? Simply because, attacker needs to intercept a communication between two parties who are using the same encryption key. Now, chosen plaintext attack. The attacker chooses the encrypted plaintext. The goal is to recover the encryption key or some information about the encryption key. Very difficult type of, a cryptoanalytic attack. Simply because the attacker, even though the attacker can choose a plaintext, specially designed to reveal information about the encryption key. Okay. Now, another type is the chosen ciphertext attack. Attacker in this type of attack chooses the ciphertext that is decrypted. The goal to recover the plain text, okay, or any some information about the plain text as well. Now, this is considered very difficult type of attack. Why? Well, simply because the attacker needs to be able to trick the victim into decrypting ciphertext that the attacker has chosen. And this is why it's considered a very difficult type of attack. Now, the last one is the side channel attack. It exploits unintentional information leakage from any system or hardware devices. It occurs through a variety of physical channels, power conception, electromagnetic radiation, timing, and so on. So here, for example, like an attacker might be able to measure the amount of time it takes to encrypt or decrypt a message. That's what they call it, the timing attack. Or or the attack or basic attack, to measure the amount of power consumed during the encryption or decryption process in the machines. Now, and that's what they call a power analysis attack. There's also, or the attacker needs to measure the electromagnetic radiation emitted by a device. And that's what we call the electromagnetic radiation attack. And these are typically a very difficult type of attacks. Now, brute force attack, this happens when an attacker tries every possible keys in the key space, trying to crack, the password or figure out the encryption key. Now, they usually use password cracking program, and they try to attempt every possible combination of characters in an effort to break the password hash, you know. And okay, here also I have a YouTube video about brute force attack for Telnet password. Please watch it so you can learn more about the brute force attack. Now, man-in-the-middle attack, attackers place, themselves between the victim computer and another host computer. They intercept the message sent from the victim to the host, and they pretend to be the host computer. And also, I have another type of YouTube video talk about beef firmware, and this one teach you how hackers launch man in the browser attacks. Now we have another type of attack called SSL TLS downgrade attack. Now, one of the things that attacker can do is trick the victim into using less secure version of SSL or TLS, or the attacker intercept the initial communication, and it has to be the initial communication, between the web server and the web browser. So the whole idea is what? To force the vulnerable server, to insecurely renegotiate the encryption being used down to a weaker one. Now, this works because the web server and the web browser, they must negotiate and decide which cipher will be used, to communicate before they begin sending out data. Now, what are the countermeasures? I mean, of course, it goes without saying you have to update the web browser and the server operating system, okay, with the latest security updates. You need to enable HSTS, the one we discussed previously. Of course, do not use public Wi-Fi unless you use a VPN. That's very important. Now, dictionary attacks, basically, attacker runs a password cracking program that uses a dictionary of known words as an input file. I mean, basically, these input files are what they call it the word list. You know, you could, you could pay for it, download it from online if you want, or you could use a software like a Crunch, which can help you generate word list from a character set. It's a very good type of word list generator, because also you could create your custom word list based on a specific character sets and combination. Okay. Now, replay attack, and here we will see that the user, they have a, a session with the server, and the attacker here intercept a valid message and retransmit it to the recipient, which is the server in this case, later. This can be done to trick recipient into thinking that the message is a new and authentic, which is in fact it is not. Now, one of very important countermeasure is time stamping. Each transaction or authentication request should be time stamped. Recipients check the timestamp to ensure it is within a reasonable time window. Now, if a packet is delayed beyond this window of time, it is considered invalid. Now, the sequence numbers, every packet should be labeled with a sequence number, of course. If a recipient receives a packet with an old sequence number that was used long time ago, it can be easily identified and discarded. One-time passwords also, it's a good example here, are valid for a single transaction or login session. So even if captured and replayed, they will not be valid for future transactions. Now, challenge response authentication. This method involves, the server sending a unique challenge to the client, and the client must respond with the value derived from the challenge and a secret value. Since the challenge code changes every time, capturing a response would not be useful for future authentication, and that's very common. Okay. Now, session tokens also, this is another, common countermeasures. After the initial authentication between the user and the server, a unique session token can be issued. This token is required for all subsequent transactions during the session, making it difficult for an attacker to carry out a replay attack later on without the token. And finally, here we have the encrypted channels. Okay, like you should use SSL, TLS for web traffic, which makes eavesdropping and capturing of packets by attackers very challenging. Now let's talk a bit about password cracking. Now, if a password uses common dictionary words, basically, it's not really that difficult for password cracking programs to crack the password in no time. Brute force is a common method, by the way. One way to speed up the brute force cracking efforts is by using rainbow table. Why? See, rainbow table is basically a database that is used to gain authentication by cracking the password hash. Uh, it is a pre-computed dictionary of plain text password and their corresponding hash values that can be used to find out what plain text password produces a particular hash. And that's what makes things a lot easier. Now, to make this, rainbow table, useless, we have to apply the salt or password salting. It's a primary use with the cryptographic hash function, especially in the context of storing password securely. So it's basically you could see here, this is the password and here's the password and the salt has been added here, you know and then after you hash the password, and you could see here this is the hash password, and then here you will add the salt one here, then that will be stored in the password databases. Okay, now The whole thing here will be hashed, okay, using any algorithm, okay, and here's the output. The hash password and the password are right now in this look. Now, so here we could see that the whole purpose is what? Defend against dictionary attacks and rainbow tables. You know, let's put it this way: without salts, attackers can pre-compute the hash value of commonly used password, dictionary words or possible combination in what it's termed as dictionary attack or rainbow tables, which are pre-computed tables, as I mentioned, for reversing cryptographic hash function. Now, you should add the unique salt to each password, which is done by the software, by the way. So even two users have the same password, their hashes will be completely different because of the unique salts here. Like every user will have a different salt. This will result basically in a unique output for each of the two users, even if they use the same password here. Now, uh, by the way, a graphic processing unit GP is able to crack salted password much faster than CPUs because it can generate and test millions of possible passwords in parallel. That's basically due to design of the GPU, which is the graphical processing unit. Now, there are plenty of password cracking out there. You must first obtain the password file from the system that stores the username and the password. In Next systems, you can find it under etc shadow file. And Windows here, you need the SAM file are stored in it, in this file, as an example. There are plenty of password cracking programs like Hashcat is very good one. John the Ripper, and Password Dump 8, and plenty of more. This is just a quick overview. You could see here, for example, using sudo tail dash n one, like, if you want to pick number one in the password. And here's the etc shadow. And here you could see that this corresponds to username. Now, the whole thing here is the encrypted password in the shadow file. Now, here basically is the last password change date. And here's 0, mean no minimum password age. Here's 999, if you look up here. This is the maximum password age. And 7 is basically, password inactivity period, for example, this is empty, and sorry, and 7 is the password warning period here. And this is one way of learning and capturing this information, the encrypted one. Now, there's also another file or another program called FGDump. This is a tool that was, known or used for dumping Windows password hashes from a target system. This tool can extract NTLM, and landman hashes and can later be subjected to offline cracking attempts, using tools like John the Ripper or Hashcat. Now, here's John the Ripper, basically. Here is, this is, by the way, a very popular open source password cracking tool. It was originally developed for Unix operating system, but has been expanded and run on various platforms, however, you still need to prepare a list of hashes which can be obtained through various means, like fgdump. You use the fgdump to create all these hashes, and then you could use John the Ripper, okay, or Hashcat to crack it. Now, finally, I have on my YouTube channel video will teach you how a steganography program work and for example, I'm using this tool called StigHide. You have to download it and run it and install it into your Kali Linux. And this one, you could use it to hide data in various kinds of image files, and audio files. And finally, I want to, in this lesson, we summarize briefly the history and the principles of cryptography. We described symmetric and asymmetric encryption algorithm. We discussed public key infrastructure in depth. We described possible attacks on crypto system, and then we learn about compare hashing algorithms and how they ensure data integrities. And at the end, I want to thank you so much for watching this video lecture, and I hope you find it useful. Thank you again.